Noon arrived, and the female employees all stood up at once and headed to the break room in a group. Some of them had their purses and cell phones, ready to go out for lunch. Most of the men preferred eating out. Watching almost everyone leave, I took my lunch box out of my bag and opened the lid. That's when Sam peeked over my shoulder from behind.
"John, you brought that cheap-looking lunch again?"
He always ate out, but he probably delayed his departure just to tease me. When he came back from lunch, he'd always boast loudly, "I ate at this famous French restaurant that was in a magazine," or "the midday set meal at the traditional restaurant was amazing." He always flaunted his wealth, being a college grad from a rich family, and has been looking down on me, a high school grad from a poorer background, ever since we started working. I lost my parents in an accident when I was in elementary school, and my grandma raised me ever since. She had her own business, so we got by, but I didn't get new stuff like other kids, nor could we afford luxuries. Being made fun of for being poor was a regular occurrence, but my grandma would always cook my favorite meals.
"Eating delicious food can make you forget your sorrows,"
she'd say.
"It'll make you want to keep going the next day."
Whenever I had her meals and talked with her, my spirits were lifted. Her meals are what kept me going. So, when Sam mocked the lunchbox my grandma poured her heart into, I couldn't stand it. I retaliated with, "This is a homemade lunch my grandma made for me. Don't make fun of it. And why does it matter to you what lunch I bring?" Even though we started working here at the same time, I always used formal language with him since he had a higher educational background. Predictably, he kept teasing,
"Looks like something an old lady would make. The colors are all off, and everything's just brown. The whole office smells like stew now because of you. Think of your colleagues who have to work here."
No one else ever complained about eating lunch at the desk. Even our manager brings his own lunch box made by his wife. It was clear he was just bullying me. The best way to deal with people like him is to ignore them. Responding just encourages them or makes them more aggressive. No matter how much he ridiculed my lunch, I shouldn't react. So, I ignored him and began eating. After some more taunting, he realized he was running out of lunch time and left with an annoyed click of his tongue. It's baffling that even as adults, some people still behave like schoolyard bullies. These people probably won't ever change. Then one day, during lunch, Sam approached me.
"John, I feel bad seeing you eat that awful lunch every day. Let me treat you to lunch today."
I wondered what got into him, but I politely declined. "I appreciate the offer, but I have this." Before I could finish, he grabbed my lunchbox wrapped in a cloth. He then unwrapped it and opened the lid, exclaiming,
"Yuck, this lunch smells like trash. Not even worth eating."
To my shock, he dumped the contents into a nearby trash can. Of course, the contents began to fall out, bit by bit. "What the?" Stunned and at a loss for words, I watched as he said,
"Now you have no reason to say no. I'll take you to a top-tier Western restaurant today, 100 times better than that lunch."
I was seething with anger. "Sam, what have you done? You're going to pay for this," I said in a deep, resonant voice. Noticing the change in my demeanor, a confused Sam said, "What?" Suddenly, a voice rang out from behind.
"Excuse me, John. Did you bring the lunchbox I asked for?"
I turned around to see Mr. Sounder, the CEO of our company's biggest client.
"Mr. Sounder? Why are you here?"
He was freaked out by the unexpected situation and shouted out in a cracked voice. Noticing the lunchbox in Sam's hand and the discarded contents in the trash, Mr. Sounder looked astounded and asked,
What's going on here?
I sincerely apologized to Mr. Sounder. I'm terribly sorry. The truth is, my grandma packed a lunch for you with some of your favorite deli dishes, but I am unable to deliver it to you anymore. My grandma runs a deli, and Mr. Sounder was a regular there. Since he moved away, he hadn't been able to visit the deli as often. So, knowing that I had a meeting with our CEO today, he'd asked me to bring him a lunch box. Mr. Sounder's gaze was fixed on the food in the trash can.
Who threw this away?
Though he phrased it as a question, his tone was confident. Sam visibly flinched.
It was me.
He replied with a disappearing voice, his face pale as though he might faint at any moment.
What gave you the right to throw away someone else's lunch? How could you do something so terrible?
Mr. Sounder's voice of anger echoed throughout the office. The manager, who was enjoying his wife's packed lunch, rushed over and immediately apologized to Mr. Sounder.
I deeply apologize for our employees' behavior.
Even though he didn't fully understand the situation, he knew better than to upset an important client. Realizing the gravity of what he had done, Sam also apologized with the manager.
I'm so sorry. I'll buy you a comparable lunch right away.
However, this only deepened the frown on Mr. Sounder's face.
You don't get it. Do you know why I specifically asked him to bring me that lunchbox? It was filled with dishes his grandma made with love. If I wanted a store-bought lunch, I would have gotten one myself.
At a loss for words, Sam began to cry. But Mr. Sounder coldly responded,
You should be apologizing to John and his grandma, not me. It's quite unsettling to think that we have such an irresponsible employee.
I pulled out another lunchbox from my bag and handed it to him. I'm not sure if it has your favorite deli dishes, but this is a homemade lunch box my grandma packed for me. Would you accept this one instead? He was taken aback.
But isn't this your lunch?
I nodded reassuringly. It's okay. I'll just have Sam treat me to lunch today. This time, it was Sam's turn to be surprised. Holding the lunchbox I gave him, Mr. Sounder said, For John's sake, I won't mention this again. But you, young man, need to seriously reflect on your actions. He then left for his meeting with our CEO. After getting permission from the manager to go out for lunch, Sam and I left the office. Sam took me to a fancy Western restaurant, a place I normally wouldn't go. The burgers alone were over $20. It's nice to dine out once in a while, I said, then he sincerely apologized.
John, I truly apologize.
He then shared his story of why he had thrown the lunch away. His parents were well off, however, they were always busy. Whenever there were school events that required students to bring lunch, his mom would order gourmet lunch box from high-end restaurants.
While everyone else was enjoying homemade lunches with their families, I was eating alone, and it was lonely.
As he progressed through high school and college, fewer and fewer classmates brought packed lunches, so he didn't really feel self-conscious about it anymore.
But when I found out that you brought a homemade lunch to work, and it was obviously a very elaborate homemade lunch, I was jealous.
Out of jealousy, he had tried to mock me for being a high school graduate and being less wealthy, and when that didn't work, he lashed out.
I wanted to prove that a restaurant lunch was better than your homemade one. Now I realize how wrong I was. No matter how much I apologize, it won't make up for it.
He sobbed. It was eye-opening. I always envied his privileged background, never knowing the loneliness he felt. If you promise not to harass me anymore, I won't take any action against you for what you did. Tears streaming down his face, he vowed never to mistreat me again. The next day, I handed him a lunchbox. My grandma heard about what happened and wanted you to have this. He was in shock and asked,
Is it okay?
She wants you to have it. With that said, he responded, thank you, and accepted it. From then on, things changed. Sam was transferred to the customer service department. It was a decision made by the upper management based on the report from the manager. He solemnly received the transfer notice and replied, I'll work with a renewed spirit and dedication. Although Sam and I are in different departments now, I see him almost every day. That's because, ever since that day, my grandma started packing an extra lunch for him. The day after I first handed him the lunchbox, he visited my grandma's deli.
Eating the lunch made with so much love, I realized the foolishness of my actions. I'm truly sorry.
My dear, I'll make you lunch every day from now on. Make sure you eat up.
She assured him. Feeling indebted to her, he started frequenting the deli and soon became a regular. Just the other day, Sam bumped into Mr. Sounder at the deli. Seeing his discomfort, my grandma praised him to Mr. Sounder.
This young man has truly turned over a new leaf. All thanks to you, Mr. Sounder.
Hearing this, Mr. Sounder smiled and said,
Eating food made with so much love, it's hard for anyone to stay mad.
He then patted Sam on the shoulder and said,
Keep up the good work.
Sam nodded vigorously and replied with a strong yes. On weekends, Sam started helping out at my grandma's store, becoming like another grandson to her.
I did wrong.
He confessed,
but I'm grateful for this chance to connect with John and others because of it.
The mischievous look he once had was now gone, as if a weight had been lifted from him. Me too, I added. Any tension between us vanished, and he became one of my best friends. After 2 years in customer service, it was announced in April that Sam would be returning to my department. I'm sure we'll become great work buddies. My name is Jacob Thompson, a salesman at a mid-tier beer company. My name, Jacob Thompson, sounds pretty manly, but I haven't quite lived up to it. I've been shy and introverted since my grade school days and was known as shy guy even in college. I finally landed a job in this company after failing multiple interviews. I've been a nondescript salaryman for 5 years, without making much progress, and not particularly fond of beer. But even I had my moment of opportunity. For some reason, the head of a company that operates several convenience stores took a liking to me and asked me to handle negotiations. My boss was overjoyed and, in a complete turnabout, began to spur me on.
Thompson, the company's fate lies on your shoulders. Time to man up.
He patted me on the back and sent me off to the negotiations. The other party has scheduled the negotiations for 8 o'clock in the morning. I was walking down Main Street after navigating through the busy commuting crowd at the station. Waiting for the light to change, I saw a small boy dart out into the crosswalk from the crowd of people waiting on the opposite side. Look out! I instinctively shut my eyes. The screech of brakes echoed around, and a murmur ran through the crowd. I slowly opened my eyes and saw a woman with long hair lying on the ground with the boy in her arms. The car had stopped just in time, inches away from the woman's head.
What the hell are you doing, you idiot?
I heard the driver yell angrily. The boy was crying as he wriggled out of the woman's arms and ran to a woman who seemed to be his mother. But the woman who had saved the boy wouldn't move. As soon as the light turned green, I rushed over to the woman. "Are you all right?" I tried to ask, but I froze. The woman lying in front of me was wearing what we'd call a gang jacket. On the back of the pure white jacket, it said Wild Roses in New York in crimson. And the jacket was torn and tattered. Oh no, getting involved with her could be dangerous. Her face was covered in blood here and there. She must have been beaten up. Isn't there anyone who can help her? I looked around, but everyone was pretending not to see. The signal started flashing, so I hurriedly carried her onto the sidewalk. She let out a groan and faintly opened her eyes. Are you okay?" I hesitantly asked, and she said, "Where's the kid?" in a hoarse voice. "The kid, Bo, the little boy. He's all right. He's with his mom."
Good.
With that, she closed her eyes again. At that moment, I felt a surge of anger towards myself. I don't know who this woman is, but she's still worried about the boy even in this state. But I've gotten over it, and I called an ambulance on my phone. I took off my jacket and draped it over the woman's shoulders. "Hang in there. An ambulance is on its way."
Don't bother.
She weakly tried to shake off my hand. I instinctively grabbed her hand. "Just listen to me, please." Startled by the shouts, the woman opened her eyes. Our gazes met for the first time. She seemed to smile faintly before closing her eyes again. After a while, the sound of an ambulance siren echoed in the distance. I, who had jumped in with her, had completely forgotten about my business meeting because of this completely unexpected event. It was after she was taken into the hospital on a stretcher that I remembered it. I quickly called my client to apologize to the manager in charge. Of course, I explained the situation.
"I see. You were helping someone and forgot about our meeting."
The manager's gentle voice was, in a way, frightening. "Yes, I'm really sorry. I'll be there shortly."
"No, don't worry about it. Please, stay with her. What you did was incredibly admirable. It's natural that you'd forget about our dealings."
"Oh no."
"I'm glad to know that our company wasn't your top priority. It truly is an admirable act. Now, if you'll excuse me."
I was left staring at the abruptly disconnected phone. I didn't have the courage to call back. I decided to call my office and report the situation. As expected, I was berated and the call was abruptly ended. That's it. At best, I'll be demoted. At worst, I'll be fired. As I sat dazed, unable to think of anything, a nurse came out of the treatment room.
"It's done. The patient has something to say to you. Please come in."
I stood up slowly and entered the treatment room. The woman, covered in bandages, lay on a simple bed receiving N4 drip.
I was listening.
Caught off guard, I tilted my head in confusion.
"So you left your important work to take care of me? You're quite the meddler."
Realizing she had heard me desperately apologizing over the phone, I got a bit annoyed. There's no need for such words from the person I saved.
Ha, as if these injuries would kill me.
Her cheeky tone irritated me even more. Then, suddenly, the woman got up and bowed to me.
Let me properly thank you. My name is Jessica Smith. I'm the leader of the Wild Roses in New York. It seems I've caused you quite some trouble. If there's anything I can do, don't hesitate to tell me.
The rude attitude she'd shown just moments ago was gone, replaced by a solemn expression. Jessica continued to look at me. Well, you, despite your severe injuries, risked yourself to save a child. That was inspiring.
Just call me Jessica. It wasn't a big deal. I just did what anyone would do.
Well, so did I. We smiled at each other. When Jessica smiled, she suddenly looked much younger. Maybe 16, 17. How did you get injured? I asked what I'd wanted to know. Jessica shrugged.
Isn't it obvious? I'm the leader of a female gang. I got ambushed by a rival gang. I played the decoy to let my gang members escape, and they beat me without hesitation.
She bit her lip in frustration and muttered, I'll get them back for this. You're a girl, you shouldn't be fighting. Your parents must be worried. Jessica looked puzzled before bursting into laughter.
My parents are proud of me leading a gang. After all, my father is involved in the underworld, and he's all for his daughter being strong. If I had let them beat me without fighting back, he'd probably kill me.
Seeing Jessica continue to laugh, a chill ran down my spine. I should avoid getting involved any further. Do well. I'm glad your injuries weren't severe. I have to get back to work, so. As I turned my back to leave, I heard, wait up.
I'll pay you back someday. I'll definitely help you out whenever you're in a tight spot. Give me your business card.
I was told so intimidatingly that I couldn't refuse, and I timidly handed over my card. Jessica carefully stored it in her chest pocket.
Thanks, Mr. Thompson. I won't forget you.
Her smile was dazzlingly beautiful as she said that. Afterwards, I managed to avoid being demoted or fired, but I was given a sinecure position. I've been sent to a department called Document Management, where I spend each day sorting files. It's full of old-timers. I often wonder if a completely different life would have awaited me if I had abandoned Jessica and went straight to the meeting that day, and I shake my head. No matter how many times I replay it, I don't think I could have left Jessica behind. It was the only moment in my life where I gathered up real courage. At least, I want to live my life being proud of that. So, I don't want to regret my current situation. All I can do is to work really hard in the environment I've been given. If things get too unbearable, I can always look for another job. I tell myself that I can at least show that much determination, and I continue to work unenthusiastically. Before I knew it, 3 years had passed in this way. Maybe it's because of my perseverance, but I'm now a team leader. Of course, I'm the team leader of the document management department.
Hey, have you heard about this, boss?
Mr. Williams, a veteran of the company, placed a coffee on my desk and started talking.
Our newly launched sparkling wine is in serious trouble, apparently.
What do you mean serious trouble?
Despite a company-wide effort to promote it, it seems it's not selling well at all. We had a deal to supply a major chain of bars, but they canceled at the last minute.
Really?
Yes, the sales guys are running around in panic, but it seems to be in vain. Well, it was just bad timing.
Mr. Williams nodded and went back to his own desk. By bad timing, he probably meant that our wine was launched at the same time as a new wine named at Women by one of the leading wine manufacturers in the States. Of course, a beer company trying to ride the wave by making wine is bound to fail. Looking back my old days in sales, I turned my eyes back to my paperwork. A little while later, I was called by the head of the sales department. I thought it was some kind of mistake, but I decided to go to the first sales department anyway. The familiar faces all turned to look at me at once. I was taken aback by the intensity of everyone's gaze. What? Did I do something? I left here 3 years ago. I don't think there's anything that I could be reprimanded me for now.
Team Leader Thompson, I'm sorry to trouble you by asking you to come all the way here.
My former boss, with a beaming smile, patted my shoulder. He seemed different from the man who harshly reprimanded me in front of everyone when I failed in negotiations.
No, today we have a customer who really wants to meet you.
A customer?
I've always thought you were a capable man, and it seems I was right. I'm truly delighted.
I almost asked him, what? But I held back. I would love to know when he thought that.
Well, come this way. The customer is waiting.
He led me to the reception room with the eager manner of an innkeeper, which made me feel a bit creepy. When he knocked on the door, a woman's voice said, "Please come in." "Excuse me," I said, and walked into the room. There was a young woman in a suit sitting on the sofa. When she saw me, she stood up.
It's been a while, Mr. Thompson.
She said briskly, bowing her head. Who is this woman? I stared at her in thought. At that moment, I had a flashback to events from 3 years ago vividly. Jessica?
Yes, you remember me? I'm glad.
Her smile was the same as the last one she gave me years ago. With her hair neatly styled in a bun, dressed in a cream-colored suit, Jessica had fully transformed into a mature woman.
She is the sales manager at Aegis, a company that owns several clubs here in Manhattan. They're interested in using our newly launched sparkling wine at all of their clubs,
said my boss, his face lighting up with excitement. I was still trying to make sense of everything.
Surprised, aren't you? Aegis is a company my father runs. I promised to help out once I turned 18, and they've been quite lenient with me. You know what I mean by lenient, right?
Jessica said with a mischievous smile. She was probably referring to the wild days of her youth.
As for our deal with your company, I specifically requested you, Mr. Thompson, to be in charge. You'll handle it, won't you?
Without waiting for my response, my boss turned back towards Jessica.
Mr. Thompson is a protege of mine. I taught him everything he knows about this job. I'm so happy as if it happened to me,
he said, laughing heartily. As the boss laughed, I muttered to myself, yeah right. The next moment, Jessica echoed my thoughts. Well said, old man, she said, laughing. The boss's laughter abruptly ended.
You guys pushed him aside to a dead-end job, didn't you? All because he chose to help others instead of focusing on some important business deal. What a great company. Without Mr. Thompson, who would want to do business with you?
Contrary to her harsh words, Jessica never lost her smile, and she was more intimidating than I remembered. The boss was speechless.
I'll purchase your wine out of respect for Mr. Thompson. But if you want our business to continue, you'll need to step up your game. I tasted your wine, and it's not really the quality we would serve at our clubs. First, learn to value good people. Without good employees, there's no way you can do good business.
That was an awkward silence. Peeking over, I saw the boss staring at Jessica, looking like he was about to faint. I was holding back laughter. Jessica in her cream suit reminded me of her in her white leather jacket back then. Her poised demeanor was the epitome of a leader.
Mr. Thompson, this is my way of repaying you. We're even now. It's your turn to step up,
she said, extending her right hand. Without hesitation, I shook her hand. Of course, I'll do my best. It was an honor to help you that day. That experience has brought me to where I am today.
I'm looking forward to it,
she said. As Jessica and I exchanged handshakes, the sight of the boss trembling was rather comical. After that, I was reinstated as a sales representative, now in charge of handling Aegis. Jessica and her father, the president of the company, were very demanding of me, but it was the challenges that made the work rewarding. If I had thought that they only gave me the job out of pity, I would have become disheartened. But Jessica always treated me as an equal, and that helped me believe in my own abilities. A junior colleague commented, "You've become more of a man lately, Mr. Thompson," which made me laugh. I wondered if I finally grew up as a man. Being around Jessica, I felt myself growing, which made me feel positive. To me, Jessica was more of a man than any other men I knew, who really I admire. When I said that to her, she punched me, though. Seeing Jessica's face, a mix of anger and sulking, I etched that image in my heart as if it were a treasured possession.
My boyfriend works at a small factory in town. His name is Kevin, and he's 2 years younger than me. It was he who helped me up when my bike got knocked over on a strong windy day. My father is the CEO, and he introduced me as his precious daughter to many men over dinner at that time. None of them even slightly touched my heart. Dad has no sense in choosing men. I complained to my mom.
I hope your Prince Charming will appear soon.
She encouraged me so. It was very much obvious that people were nice to me just because of my status, the daughter of a CEO. Therefore, when my father introduced men to me, I felt that their attentions were mostly upon my father rather than me, and I couldn't trust any of them. I understand. I'm a CEO's son too. It's a tough life, isn't it? Said the young heir with a knowing smirk. Really, I've never felt hardship. I got everything I wanted and was taken everywhere. If there's one hardship, it's this matchmaking, I responded. When I said that, they always turned into a pissed-off mode, probably thinking they couldn't handle such an arrogant, condescending daughter. But some were desperate to gain power by acquiring me. Those guys were quite tough. They wouldn't back down even after my polite refusal. If only they put that effort and passion into their work. When I hear about their reputation in their company, it's never good. That's why I felt it was fate when I met Kevin. He didn't know my status or power. I believe his kindness in naturally helping out a person in need in front of him must surely be genuine. Here's your lunch, Kevin. When lunchtime comes around, I sneak out of the office and deliver his lunchbox to the factory far away from my office.
Isn't it a hassle? Your office is so far away.
No, it's fine. Look, I've got my e-bike, which makes the travel easy. Plus, it's good for my diet. I was lying. Every day I've been getting a chauffeur to take me this far. Of course, I'm paying him out of my own pocket as a tip. But it's all a secret. I'm supposedly just an ordinary employee at a small company, cycling every day to deliver lunch. I'm keeping my status concealed because I want Kevin to always see me for who I am.
By the way, are you free this weekend? One of my senior coworkers gave me movie tickets.
What? I'm in. My heart leapt at the sudden date, and I arrived at the car parked about 10 minutes walk from the factory in no time.
Welcome back, miss. You're in a good mood.
We just set up a date for the weekend. As I buckled up, the car started moving.
You park so far from the factory every day. Isn't it about time you revealed your identity?
No, absolutely not. I wonder how Kevin would react if he found out I was riding in a luxury car with a chauffeur. I recalled a few of my matchmaking partners. Those guys who snort and breathe heavily, talking too closely.
Don't worry, Kevin will surely take good care of you, miss.
That might be true, but if he ever finds me annoying, and the reason he bears with me has anything to do with my status, I don't want that.
If you think that way, you can't truly connect with anyone.
Through the rearview mirror, I could see the chauffeur furrowing his brows. When I returned to the office and checked my planner, I had a family dinner scheduled for Saturday. It's no big deal. I can just say I have work. I hurriedly emailed Kevin that I'm free both Saturday and Sunday.
What? That's not possible.
When I told my family I couldn't make it for dinner as the date was fixed for Saturday, my mom furrowed her brow.
You know I've already made the reservation at the restaurant, right? Even the owner is looking forward to it.
April, it's already just 2 days before the reservation. You can't just do such a last-minute cancellation. Jake, who is my brother, chimed in to support Mom. Anyway, we're having the dinner party on Saturday. Got it. Dad also emphasized his point. Well, it's fine. Dinner is scheduled to start at 6 p.m. I can watch the movie in the morning, have lunch, and then wander around. There's plenty of time. All right, I'll contact you when I'm on my way to the restaurant. Why do plans always seem to pile up? I feel disheartened by my own bad luck. On the day of the date, I put on a tight skirt with a lot of gusto. Kevin and I have been dating for 6 months, but we've never even held hands. A kiss is out of the question. There have been several times when I tried to hold his hand, but he always quickly avoided it. He seems to be incredibly shy. Even though there's not much difference in age, I want to take the lead as the older one, but I'm also inexperienced in love. Sorry to keep you waiting. When I arrived at the meeting place 5 minutes early, Kevin was already waiting.
Did you bike here today too?
No, I didn't drive. I took the subway.
I see. It must have been crowded, wasn't it? I couldn't even get a seat.
Me too. The subway on weekends can be so frustrating. I said it even though I barely ever ride the subway. Ever since the chauffeur told me, every little lie I tell makes my chest hurt. If only I could just say it.
Are you okay?
Sorry. I was just lost in thought. As his anxious face peered into mine, I could see he was just my type.
I see. You had a very serious look on your face. Let's go in.
When we stepped into our familiar movie theater, an incident occurred that forced me to confess my lie.
April, what are you doing here? Don't you have work?
Of all things, Jake had also come to watch a movie.
Huh, you had work today.
Upon learning of my lie, Kevin looked at his wristwatch.
What should we do? The movie is about to start. Should we do it another time?
No, it's okay. I don't have work. Jake seemed to realize we were a couple and said, "Hey there, boyfriend. We're having a family dinner tonight. You should definitely come," he blurted out. Jake. If I did that, all my lies would be exposed. No, I can't introduce him to my family.
Yeah, I guess you're right. We just started dating.
Kevin clearly looked disappointed. Oh no, that's not it. It's not that I don't want to introduce Kevin to my family. There's a complicated reason for this. The unspeakable reason is slowly choking me.
Oh, come on, don't be so stiff. It's not a formal dinner. In fact, our parents will be thrilled to have April's boyfriend join us.
I realized then that Jake was up to something bad. Whenever he was up to something, his nostrils would flare up, as they always have. Even so, I couldn't bear to see Kevin's sad face anymore, so I agreed to bring him to dinner. When I brought Kevin to the dinner party, my dad became noticeably displeased. It was understandable. After all, I had been rejecting all the suitors he had enthusiastically chosen for and introduced to me, and the one I brought was just a factory worker in a small town.
So, how much is your monthly income? Well, I'm asking this as I'm entrusting my precious daughter to you, so it's only right to ask, isn't it?
Dad, please stop it.
I take home about $1,700 a month.
My brother Jake choked on his tea, then glanced at Kevin and shrugged. Too little. That's probably what he wanted to say, but for a small-town factory, he was actually getting decent pay. It may be less compared to a tycoon's son, but…
Well, you'll get tired of him eventually.
Jake.
It's just that you and April are from different worlds. And not just in terms of your upbringings.
I don't care about that.
I wonder what a person who bosses the chauffeur around every day is saying.
Chauffeur. Kevin tilted his head in confusion. Both my dad and Jake only belittled him whenever they opened their mouths. Yet, Kevin handled it gracefully. His resilience made me fall for him even more.
Anyway, April is the CEO's daughter, so please take care of her.
CEO's daughter. Again, Kevin tilted his head. Enough of this conversation. You two are such a pain. Are you satisfied now? Let's go, Kevin. I forcefully grabbed Kevin's hand and left the dinner party.
About what they said earlier.
On our way to the subway station, Kevin stopped walking and started asking. About the CEO's daughter thing? Don't worry about it.
But…
As he was about to say something, I cut him off. I had to lie about my identity. I just wanted you to see only me. I'm sorry I deceived you. I wonder why. Tears started streaming down my face. It was probably because I confessed that I had been deceiving the person I love. He must be disappointed.
I see. We all have things we don't want to talk about. You haven't asked me much about myself either, which is part of why I'm comfortable around you. But there's something I need to tell you too. But I still don't know how to put it into words. Can you wait a bit?
Okay. He probably wants to break up. After seeing the way my dad and Jake behaved, he probably can't continue our relationship. As I headed home with heavy heart, my dad and Jake rushed out to the porch looking pale.
Hey, April, about Kevin.
My dad was sweating profusely, which rarely occurred. He kept wiping it off. Jake also looked serious. Enough. You both have ruined everything. I couldn't help raising my voice. While catching my breath, my dad continued.
Do you know who Kevin really is?
Who he really is? What is he talking about? I know more about it than Dad does. He's just a young man working at factory in a small town. Nothing more, nothing less. I mean, I've seen him at work with my own eyes. Or maybe by who he really is, Dad means his background.
The truth is that he's the heir to our competitor.
Don't talk nonsense. He hasn't told me anything like that. Just then, Mom joined in.
He might not even know himself yet. I was surprised when I saw his face. He looked just like my classmate. So I contacted him. And it turned out to be right. His father's company is overseas, so he was left with his grandparents since he was a child. It's kind of sad. They wanted him to come over after graduating from college, but he declined and is now working at an acquaintance's company.
While April was listening to her mom's story with skepticism, her cell phone rang. It was Kevin. Hello. I went back to my room and pressed the call button.
Is now a good time. I really need to talk.
Yay! Kevin was the son of our competitor. But as I had just heard from Mom, he was unhappy about being left with his grandparents since he was young, and had decided not to take over his father's company.
It's not that I was hiding it, but I couldn't bring myself to tell you.
Kevin was crying on the other end of the phone. If Kevin changes his mind and takes over the company, I would end up marrying into our competitor.
I was shocked. When I heard the name of the company, my dad used to mention it a lot. I never thought that the girl I randomly met would be the daughter of my father's business rival.
Kevin is a very serious and straightforward person, so I believe he would do a great job if he were put in charge of the company. In fact, there's a possibility that he could even put our company in a difficult situation.
Were we two people who were never supposed to meet?
That's not true. I vehemently denied it. We might have been business rivals until now, but that's exactly why we should be able to do something together. There's a saying that a rival is the best friend.
I see. My grandpa has been telling me to help out with my dad's company. I got my current job at the factory thanks to my grandpa, but the owner is old and there's no successor, so it seems like it's going to close next year.
So you're going to go overseas?
I was thinking about it, but after meeting you, April, I didn't want to go.
How should I respond to his words? I don't want to ruin his future, but I also don't want him to go.
April, let's get married.
What?
I know it's strange to say this over the phone, but I'll go over there and learn a lot. And when I come back to the US, let's get married.
Why? Even after my dad and Jake said such horrible things to you, weren't you disappointed?
On the contrary, I felt fired up. I even thought that maybe this was God's way of pushing me forward.
As I listened to Kevin, I cried, hunched over. I want to see him. I want to see him right now. We are the daughter and son of our competitors. I don't know how we can change the future, but I believe in the love I felt. We will stand strong and believe in each other. Kevin, I'll be waiting for you. My voice came out raspy.
Thank you. I'll become a man worthy of you and come back.
I nodded over and over again, telling Kevin, let's definitely be happy together.
After waiting for quite some time, the front door finally opened. Michelle's mother stepped back behind her husband, who stood firmly in the doorway after she opened the door. I straightened my back and greeted her parents. Nice to meet you. My name is Kevin Miller. Thank you for making time to meet me today. I heard you like pecan pie, so I brought some. I hope you like it. I handed over the gift bag. Michelle's father signaled his wife with a nod, and she took the bag from me and stepped back. The father remained standing firmly in the doorway with no intention of inviting me in. He looked at me from head to toe, judging with a cold gaze.
A poor guy in a cheap suit.
Michelle rebutted her father's remark.
Dad, isn't that a bit harsh? Kevin is sincere, kind, and a wonderful person, and he's dressed appropriately for a marriage proposal. Judging him as some poor guy in a cheap suit isn't fair.
The suit I was wearing wasn't tailor-made, but rather off the shelf, so it didn't fit perfectly. However, I had chosen a black suit, a pristine white shirt, a subdued tie, and black leather shoes, so I'm sure I wasn't being disrespectful. It's okay, I reassured Michelle, and looked at her father. I apologize. I'll be more mindful next time. I didn't want to create any bad vibe at this point. After all, I came for their approval for our marriage.
Dad, can we go inside now?
Michelle was starting to take off her shoes. No, her father sternly replied.
You, an overreaching poor man, should just leave. I won't hand my daughter to someone at the bottom of society.
I had decided to be patient, no matter what was said, hoping to gain approval for our marriage. But his words made my blood boil. Excuse me, but isn't that a bit rude? I am. I tried to object, but was interrupted.
Your company is probably just some flimsy small business, right, with hardly any pay. Michelle will surely struggle if she marries you. Only someone in an elite position like me suits to marry her.
Michelle raised her voice in defense.
Dad, Kevin is.
Enough. Be quiet. Whatever you say is pointless. I will never approve this marriage.
It was clear to me that nothing would be heard at this point. I decided it was best to leave Michelle's home.
I'm so sorry. This is why I didn't want to bring you here.
Michelle apologized, looking remorseful. Michelle and I met at a college club where she was my junior. Being 2 years younger, Michelle was always passionate in whatever she did. Even when things didn't go well, she remained positive, bringing a good vibe to the club. Over time, I became attracted to her, and we began dating. Having graduated and started working before her, our opportunities to go on dates became less frequent. Still, she always supported me, cheerfully saying things like, "Just hearing your voice makes me happy and lifts my spirits." With her, I believed we could build a home full of smiles after marriage. Feeling this, I proposed to her after reaching a significant milestone at work. "Please always stay by my side and keep smiling. Will you marry me?" In response to my words, Michelle showed the happiest smile I had ever seen and nodded.
Let's build a happy life together. Thank you.
After getting engaged, I expressed my desire to greet her parents about our marriage. However, Michelle hesitated, making a rare grimace.
My parents, especially my dad, are very stubborn and has a big ego. It might not be a pleasant experience for you.
I had never heard Michelle talk about her parents before. The reason I learned for the first time was that her parents had been controlling her since she was young, never really listening to her opinions. They had decided where she should study, both in high school and college. She never thought of going against their wishes.
But after meeting you, Kevin, my perspective changed.
As the club president, I came up with an event idea that had never been done before. I actively approached other colleges and organizations to discuss it and take action on my own. Many were inspired by my proactive nature. When job hunting, I didn't apply to the company my parents recommended, but chose a field of my own interest, securing a position. Even though the job was within commuting distance, I decided to move out and start living on my own after being hired. I often returned to my parents, but every time I was met with sarcasm and comments treating me as if I were their property. Gradually, I visited them less and less. By the time Michelle accepted my proposal, I only went back home during Thanksgiving and Christmas. Other than that, I just give them a brief call to update them. Upon getting engaged, instead of meeting in person, Michelle reported our engagement and her wishes for a formal introduction over the phone. Her father, who held a manager's position in a top tire company, took pride in his role. He had hoped for Michelle to marry someone from an elite background. When Michelle's father heard from her that I was a secretary, he opposed the marriage.
A secretary? You just manage schedules, right? That's not a promising future. I won't let my daughter marry a man with no prospects.
Michelle argued that this was not the case, but he wouldn't listen. Finally, she said that we would visit in 3 weeks on a Sunday and requested him to be available for a proper discussion. She then ended the call.
I only see myself marrying you, Kevin. If my parents continue opposing, I'm ready to cut ties.
Seeing Michelle so distressed, I smiled and embraced her, assuring her, "Don't worry, it won't come to that." A month later, Michelle's father would have no choice but to approve our marriage. That day, accompanied by my colleagues, I stood in front of the building where Michelle's father worked. I was dressed in a high-end tailored suit from a renowned tailor, which I had promised myself I wouldn't wear until I reached a certain level of success. Entering the lobby, I was met with an unusual scene. The executives were lined up, trembling. At the front stood the CEO with a pale face. Recognizing me, he started to apologize.
I deeply apologize for the terrible comments made by Mr. Smith. We'll make sure this never happens again. Please continue the business with us.
To them, my company was a major client. Terminating our contract would lead to significant losses.
Mr. Smith, apologize properly.
CEO yelled, causing Michelle's startled father to snap back to reality.
I had no idea. Michelle said you were a secretary.
His reluctance to admit his mistake was evident. The secretary part wasn't a lie. Just last week, I was appointed to CEO during the shareholders' meeting. I calmly replied, I had worked as the chairman's secretary at a large corporation with over 100,000 employees. My role was somewhat akin to an overprotective mother. When it comes to business trips, I'd handle flight tickets and hotel bookings, and on the day, make sure nothing was forgotten in the preparations. Flights can sometimes get canceled or delayed, so I'd always be careful and create a schedule with a buffer. If plans got delayed, I'd promptly contact clients or the reserved places to ensure minimal inconvenience on their end. For family birthdays, I'd arrange gifts and flowers. Not only would I shop on their behalf, but I'd also sometimes research beforehand to find something they'd truly appreciate. Occasionally, family members would ask favors of me. The role of an assistant is to always be proactive in preparations, ensuring their principal doesn't face any issues, and if something does go wrong, to handle it with minimal risks. And no matter what, the chairman's needs always come first. Naturally, I'd arrive at the office earlier than the chairman, and even if I had personal plans post-work, if the chairman needed something, I'd drop everything to handle it. Perfection is constantly demanded, and praise is rare. Over 5 years, I learned about management under the chairman, earned his trust, and was taught leadership. Later, when the previous CEO resigned, the chairman recommended me. After the board's approval, I was elected CEO during a shareholders' meeting. Michelle's father finally accepted the truth.
I deeply apologize. Please don't end our contract over my mistake. I'll face the consequences, but please spare the company.
Although he had been rude to me, he was loyal to his company and had a high reputation at work. Approaching Michelle's father, you had knelt on the floor with his knees bent. I placed a hand on his shoulder. I'm sorry. I had mentioned to the former CEO that Mr. Smith had opposed our marriage, but I had no idea it had come to this. Saying that, he turned to face the CEO. There is no need to worry. We have no intention of cutting off any deals. I merely stopped by today to introduce myself as the new CEO. Hearing this, not just the CEO but all the executives breathed a sigh of relief. I visited Michelle's family again for a marriage introduction. This time, I was led not just to the entrance, but into the living room and took a seat facing the sofa. Michelle and I have been seriously dating since our college days 8 years ago. I proposed to her recently, and we both wish to build a happy home full of smiles. Would you kindly give your blessing for our marriage? Her father nodded, and in response, he said,
Even after my rudeness the other day, you've come here so courteously. Thank you. I was prepared for a demotion or transfer, but I am deeply grateful you've been so considerate. Please, take good care of my daughter.
Michelle, who had been tense, finally relaxed her face.
Thank you, Dad.
Michelle's mother took out a handkerchief and wiped away her tears. With that, we've received permission to marry. Thank you for all your help.
I was astonished to hear that the former chairman had arranged for my father to give his consent to our marriage. We truly appreciate it.
At the wedding announcement gathering, Michelle and I expressed our gratitude to the chairman.
I'm just glad it worked out,
the chairman said with a smile. When I walked into the lobby and saw the company executives standing there, pale and trembling in a line, I was shocked. Hearing this, the chairman laughed mischievously.
I thought I'd play a little prank, but I might have gone too far. I did apologize to the CEO.
Over the past 5 years, the chairman and I had become more like close family than boss and employee. I had told the chairman about my girlfriend from college days and that I had proposed and gotten engaged. Not just that, but also that Michelle's father was a department head at a client company. When I told him that Michelle's father had opposed our marriage, he took matters into his own hands. He contacted the CEO of Michelle's father's company, Patterson, informing him about the harsh words he had spoken against me, who is about to become the new CEO. He said I was furious and mentioned that I would be visiting them soon. The CEO mistook this as a threat to end the business relationship, which led to all the ruckus.
After the storm comes a calm, they say.
The chairman laughed it off, but the CEO must have been petrified. I felt bad for him.
You got the green light for the wedding, but there might still be some issues leading up to the ceremony and reception. You think you'll be okay?
Michelle confidently replied.
We won't let our parents interfere. It's our wedding after all.
She was no longer the girl who had everything decided by her parents. There was a strong determination to live life on her own terms. I vowed to support and walk beside her, creating a home filled with smiles and happiness.
People like you, at the bottom rung, are probably going to hurt our business performance again.
The general manager of the branch, who had been transferred from the head office, ridiculed and berated me with a condescending smirk. I couldn't say anything back. Due to the sheer stupidity of this general manager, why doesn't he realize that the branch's poor performance is his own fault? I was so appalled by his idiocy that I couldn't find any words to respond. Then, a year after I joined the branch, "You're fired."
Excuse me.
I revolted against the general manager who had ridiculed me time and again. My name is David Thompson. One day, I received a directive from the head office. It was about transferring to the branch. I was surprised by the sudden order, but couldn't oppose the decision of the head office. Reluctantly, I decided to go to the branch. First, I went to greet Mr. Johnson, the general manager. "Hello, I've just arrived from the head office. My name is Thompson. Nice to meet you." As I introduced myself, the general manager let out an exaggerated sigh.
I've heard the rumors. In the head office, full of elites, you couldn't get on the promotion track and are treated as useless, right?
What? He slammed my resume, sent from the head office, onto the desk.
And you only have a high school diploma. Does the head office think of this branch as a trash can or something?
Excuse me, a trash can?
Sending a dead weight like you here is a nuisance.
Then, with a condescending smirk, he said,
People like you, at the bottom rung, are probably going to hurt our performance again.
True, This branch's performance has been deteriorating for several years. Being told by the general manager himself that my presence would further harm the performance left me stunned and lost for words. Afterwards, I managed to say excuse me to the general manager and headed to my new department, sales. The person who welcomed me there was the head of the sales department, Mr. Roberts.
If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask.
Thank you, sir. I pride myself on being a good judge of character, and I could immediately tell that Mr. Roberts was a decent man, unlike the general manager. Mr. Roberts was kind to me, an unfamiliar figure suddenly sent from the head office. I pride myself on being a good judge of character, and I could immediately tell that Mr. Roberts was a decent man, unlike the general manager.
Hey, I heard you're barely on time even though you're new here.
No, I made it by the start time.
For newcomers, being 30 minutes early is the basic rule. You don't even know that. This is why you're at the bottom.
It seems the general manager has a lot of free time, as he often comes to the sales department just to berate me.
I heard you were using your smartphone during work hours.
I'm sorry, I had an urgent message.
Also, you seem to be daydreaming a lot. Are you taking your job lightly?
The general manager's voice echoed loudly throughout the sales department. That's when Mr. Roberts stepped in to defend me.
Mr. Johnson, that's enough.
Are you challenging me?
Admittedly, David is a bit relaxed or laid back, shall we say.
Mr. Roberts tried to defend me, though his words weren't exactly flattering.
But he is very serious about his work. He's not slacking off. Please be patient with him.
However, Mr. Johnson responded by clicking his tongue.
I'll let it slide this time. But Roberts, if you continue to cover for that incompetence, you better be prepared.
With deliberately loud footsteps, Johnson left the room. I immediately apologized to Mr. Roberts. I'm sorry, it was because of me.
It's all right, but it'd be great if you can ease up a bit on being so laid back, just so the general manager doesn't keep an eye on you.
Roberts chuckled. It was true, I was quite relaxed in my approach to work. Checking my phone during work hours and daydreaming was, as the CEO said, unacceptable. So, the general manager had a point, but...
Well, Johnson doesn't like me neither.
But Mr. Roberts, you're competent unlike me, right?
If the general manager doesn't like you, it doesn't matter if you can or can't do your job. Seems I just don't click with him.
Roberts is kind to everyone and observant. On the other hand, Johnson changes his attitude based on his mood. Indeed, it's hard to imagine these two polar opposites getting along. I'll work hard for you, not for the general manager.
I appreciate that. You really have thick skin, Taking those words from the general manager without flinching.
Really, it did hurt quite a bit.
It doesn't look like it.
We chatted a bit more before getting back to work, and I began preparations to implement a certain plan. A year after my transfer to the branch office,
Thompson, well done.
Returning from a client meeting, I was greeted with applause from the sales team.
It's the highest contract the branch has ever gotten. Great job, Thompson.
It's all thanks to Mr. Roberts' support. Thank you. It's not just modesty. Thanks to Roberts' extensive support, I was able to secure the contract. Without him, the deal would have been much harder to close.
Right, the general manager was asking for you.
The general manager?
Yeah, sorry to ruin your good mood, but can you head to his office? If anything happens, call me immediately.
Thank you. Roberts looked genuinely concerned. In response, I gave a wry smile and headed to the general manager's office.
Well done, Thompson. Our branch performance is going up.
For once, the usually critical general manager was in a good mood, praising me.
It's all thanks to my guidance. It proves that even a bottom-tier employee like you can achieve this. This will surely boost my reputation at the HQ.
His cheerfulness wasn't about my successful negotiation. It was about how it would elevate his own status. Even with this success, he hasn't changed his attitude towards me.
By the way, I'm thinking of promoting you to supervisor because of this. Happy, aren't you? Show some gratitude for my generous decision.
The general manager smirked. To which I replied, well, not really.
What?
I don't need a supervisor position here at the branch. I've got a director seat waiting for me at HQ. The general manager was caught off guard by this unexpected reply and was left speechless. Deciding to go for the final blow, I added, by the way, you're fired. Here's the letter of termination from HQ.
What?
Reacting swiftly, he grabbed the paper I presented. He stared intently at it, and slowly, his face turned blue.
Who the hell are you?
Why would a mere employee have a directive from the headquarters? He must be wondering. That's when I revealed my true identity to the boss and the reason I came to the branch office. My name is David Thompson. I'm the assistant HR director from the headquarters. I came to this branch to expose your wrongdoings. That's right, I'm not just any ordinary employee. If the folks from the headquarters consider themselves elite, then I'm one of those elites too. The resume I handed to the boss was a complete fabrication. I graduated from a top-tier university in the States, and those rumors the boss heard, I made them up before coming to this branch. I covered myself in lies to ensure the boss didn't get suspicious of me. I was sent here on a direct order from the top executives at the headquarters. My mission: to investigate the cause of the branch's poor performance and to verify claims of power harassment from the branch manager. At first, I had two different objectives, but in the end, these two were connected. The fact was that the boss was embezzling company funds, and he fired those who pointed out this fact to silence them. Those who resisted were either fired or faced some kind of disciplinary action. If the boss didn't like someone, even if they were a valuable asset, he'd deal with them ruthlessly. As a result, only yes men remained around the boss. A branch lacking in talent will eventually fail. The person who reported power harassment by the branch manager was one of the employees who had been disciplined for standing up to him. The branch was under the boss's thumb, with his cronies watching everywhere. Gathering this much evidence amidst all this was quite a work. I pretended to be incompetent to avoid drawing attention from the boss's faction. And there was another reason: to protect Mr. Roberts. Calling him the last shred of goodwill left in this company wouldn't be an exaggeration. All the staffs with title were either part of the boss's faction or simply turned a blind eye. Without a talented individual like Mr. Roberts, this branch is doomed. So, I acted like an incompetent, drawing the boss's attention away from Roberts. Being from the headquarters, he couldn't just fire me, which must have frustrated him. But even as I acted incompetent, I was gathering evidence of the boss's misdeeds. The reason I was always on my phone at work was to communicate with individuals who were against the boss, introduced to me by Roberts, to collect the evidence. To the boss, I might have looked spaced out, but I was carefully observing everyone's behavior in the office. I needed to discern who was a friend and who was an enemy. Being habitually late, well, that's on me. My low blood pressure makes mornings tough. Despite trying hard for a year, I could never get to work early. But let's put that aside. I expanded my network in the branch, recruited allies, and gathered evidence of the boss's wrongdoings. After reporting to the headquarters, they decided to fire the branch manager. So would you mind stepping down from that chair? It's not meant for you. Someone more deserving should sit there. The boss was shaking uncontrollably. Whether out of anger or fear, I couldn't tell.
This is an unjust decision.
I bet the people you fired felt the same way.
I'll sue you.
Be my guest. The headquarters is preparing legal action against you. How much company money did you spend? You'll repay all of it. You know our company's attorney is top-notch, right? The boss's face turned from blue to pale. If he had to repay all the money he'd taken, even selling off all his personal assets wouldn't be enough. I continued pressing him. By the way, it seems the employees you fired are preparing to sue you. The headquarters is fully supporting this. Chances of you winning are pretty slim, don't you think? The number of people that he fired wasn't just 1 or 2. If he gets sued for emotional distress, it'll be the end for him. But it's all his own doing. Good work, sir. Perhaps unable to bear the reality presented to him, the general manager slowly slid off his chair. After that, I wrapped up my work and safely returned to the main office. Because of my accomplishments this time, I got promoted to department head. Roberts, who had come to know of my true intentions and identity, asked me to stay at the branch. I'm leaving the branch in your hands, Roberts. You're the next general manager.
What?
It's an order from the headquarters. You wouldn't refuse, would you? I had reported not only the general manager's misdeeds, but also Roberts's contributions to the main office. As a result, the position was now Roberts's to fill. Roberts seemed shocked at first, but he soon gave a reassuring smile.
All right, leave the branch to me. Take care of the headquarters.
Sure. Oh, by the way, that contract is a parting gift from me. Please use it as a foundation to rebuild the branch. Then, Roberts replied with a wry smile. If you put in the effort, you'd probably get the branch back on track in no time. I'm at the main office and Roberts is at the branch. Though we're far apart, we share the same vision of improving the company, and we continue to push forward every day.